This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All righty, we're ready to talk a little fantasy football. You all ready out there? Send in your questions right now on the YouTube chat board. You can send it in on a super chat because that'll stand out. You want to send it in on Cash App or Venmo. And by the way, thank you to Ho Yoon chiming in on a little Venmo. Thank you out there. Appreciate it. Cash App or Venmo, you can send in at Cash Big O Show. That is Cash Big O Show on Cash App or Venmo. Mr. Pianowski, how are you doing, sir?
Hanging in. It's been a very difficult week, and just, nice to see, great to see that Damar Hamlin's physical condition is on the improve. He's speaking now, and we don't know what the future holds for him, but we're just, his life was saved, and hopefully he'll have some quality of life going forward. And it's hard, man. We've been covering football, watching football since we were young. We know it's a very dangerous game. It's a very physical game, and you try not to think about it because you can't live your life scared or petrified of what might happen. But every once in a while, something like this happens, and it jolts you, and it just reminds you how meaningless really everything is, and that all that matters is health and relationships at the end of the day. So it's been I'm probably a day or two behind my normal prep. Look, week 18 is fantasy. It's kind of a weird fantasy week, right? A lot of leagues have already been decided. Not everybody plays this week. There are some teams that won't play this week competitively. A lot of backup quarterback. About half the leagues feels like it's starting their backup quarterback this week. So there's a lot of uncertainty anyway. But I just want to admit my emotional ambivalence. It's just been a hard few days, and the only thing I take joy from right now is that Damar Hamlin is on the improve.
Yep, he's on the he's improving, which is absolutely awesome. But let's kind of ride the fantasy thing. Like, we all deal with different situations. You know how many people lost their championship because of Josh Allen and Joe Burrow?
For sure. It's funny. Fantasy.
How about that? I mean, we talk about I always tell people in fantasy, half of it is skill because you got to know what the hell you're doing at least. Sure. But the other half is luck.
Ton of luck,
and variance, other injuries and all kinds of personal issues or tragedies like what we had, the other night, which was, that game was important to everything and anything that has to do with the NFL. I actually disagree completely with canceling the game now. Now knowing that Damar is going to be fine and he's headed in the right direction. I kind of disagree in not replaying this game because it affects everything about the playoffs. And that's kind of a shame. And then in our world here in fantasy, man, that there's got to be there's a lot of personal discussions going on in fantasy football this week about what do we do? Should this be right? Or who knows? I wonder if any team said, all right, let's replay our games this week.
Yeah, fantasy, much like the NFL, the last 72 hours, it's been, what do we do now? Do you take Joe Burrow's score from Week 18 and apply it, or Josh Allen's score from Week 18 and apply it? And the NFL, I think they were kind of in a no-win situation. Every different scenario I heard spelled out had some kind of flaw with it. What they're doing now is really weird with neutral site games potentially. There could be a coin flip involved. But it's just so difficult this time of year. So much of the infrastructure is where it is, and there's planning that gets done and everything. I know the NFL has that extra week between the championship games and the Super Bowl, which may have allowed things to maybe push back a week. Ideally, I wish they could have played the Bills-Bengals game. And I realize that it had Hamlin gone the wrong way health-wise, that maybe you can't ask the players to do that. But with him improving, I thought maybe that was a more plausible scenario. But ultimately, they're not going to do it. Some fantasy leagues are just saying, okay, we're treating it like a rainout. The game didn't happen. If you had Bengals or Bills, and you're two of the best offenses in football, that's one of the ironies here, right? This was one of the games of the season. We're all excited about
receivers, running backs, quarterbacks.
Two superstar quarterbacks and two guys who could easily be MVP some year. They won't win it this year, but two of the three are, in a year where there's been such awful quarterback play, right? Josh Allen and Joe Burrow are two guys we can set our watch by. Diggs is a superstar. Chase is a superstar. T. Higgins is a heck of a good football player. So yeah, it's a gut punch. I've seen a lot of different fantasy scenarios. Some people say, look, let's just split the prize. Some people have been like, well, let's apply what happens this week retroactively to last week. Whatever you, I'm not going to tell anybody what's the right thing to do. Whatever your league decides on, go with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, but I would imagine that the discussions and arguments are very interesting, down the stretch because that game had so much of an impact in reality and in fantasy. Again, the good thing, nobody's making any light of DeMar's injury. We're all blessed that he's climbing out of this thing, which is truly amazing because, man, it did not look good the other night. So I wanted to have a little fun with you. If you have any fantasy football questions, send them in right now on the YouTube chat board or on Cash App or Venmo at Cash Big O Show. And you can also send them in on Twitter at Big O Show too. We'll look for them there. Let's go into some daily fantasy for tomorrow. Pat Mahomes over and under half an interception. And I say that because they turn over the ball a lot in KC. So I'm just wondering for daily fantasy players, how would you look at that one?
I would lean under on the interceptions for Mahomes, but I will say this. The last 10 Chiefs games, they are 1-8-1 against the spread. My colleague Matt Harmon at Yahoo says they've been playing with their food, right? How does this team go to overtime against Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill out? And I think the Titans completed like 5 passes this game. How do they go to Houston and need overtime, even though they had
500 yards Houston got, dude?
Right. Over 500 yards against Houston. Somehow that game goes to overtime. The Chiefs seem like a team that's been a little bit bored. Kelsey hasn't scored in a month. I know he's been dominant at the tight end position, but you would think they'd take care of the Raiders. But I got to admit, I thought the Raiders were going to get absolutely trampled last week. Backup quarterback, 49ers defense. And the Niners needed overtime. The Niners easily could have lost that.
Shame on you for underestimating Jarrett Stidham.
I guess so, right? And again, that's been this. I say this every week. It's been the story of the year. Is just the quarterback uncertainty, right? And Jarrett Stidham, the hero that the Raiders needed. Yeah, I guess Brock Purdy's the hero that the 49ers needed. They may be the NFC favorite right now. I think the Chiefs are going to take care of business, but the way they've been playing the last couple of months, I get if anybody's hesitant. And against the spread, I would have to take the Raiders.
All right. So Mahomes over and under passing yards, 325.5.
That's really high. I have to go under on that. They're going to run the ball some of the time.
Jerick McKinnon receiving yards, 34.5.
That's an over I like. He's also, if you can get a prop on him to catch a touchdown, he's caught 4 touchdown passes in the fantasy playoffs. He's been one of the. There haven't been that many waiver wire hits this year, and I'm not saying you won your league because of Jerick McKinnon, but he may have helped you. He may have been that running back 2 or flex play that got you through the last month. McKinnon, Cam Akers came out of nowhere. The Rams were ready to walk away from Cam Akers in the middle of the season, and then he turned into a feature back in the final month of the year. So you guys like McKinnon and Akers have really come through for us as running back 2s. They're not winning your league for you, but they've been really serviceable. And they like McKinnon in hurry-up packages, and they like McKinnon as a pass blocker. So he's going to have a role every week.
All right. Travis Kelce over and under 75.5 yards.
Slightly over. I also think he's got to score a touchdown this week. I like if you can get him for first touchdown, maybe. I think that's a bet I would look into. But the Raiders generally don't have great seam coverage. Kittle got him last week, and by the way, Kittle, who was always like a touchdown underachiever, he's got 5 touchdowns his last 3 weeks, so he's really singing with Brock Purdy. After seeing what Kittle did to the Raiders, I think Kelsey, who doesn't need any help anyway, is probably in a good spot on Saturday.
Devontae Adams over and under 78.5 yards.
He clicked with Stidham. Nobody knew what was going to happen. I know Adams was a really disappointing player the previous 3 weeks. Blame some of that.
He clicked so much that he said, I want to be a Raider forever, with or without Derek Carr.
Right. He's gone from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr to Jarrett Stidham. That's been the Devontae Adams. But look, star receivers, right? We saw this offseason. A bunch of star quarterbacks changed places, and almost all of them fell on their face. 3 very important star receivers changed teams. Adams went to the Raiders. Hill went to the Dolphins. A.J. Brown went to the Eagles. And right now, I think they're 2, 3, and 4 on the fantasy leaderboard, all after Justin Jefferson. So all the receivers did great. And we know, with Hill, I don't need to tell you this. Hill's played with 3 different quarterbacks, right? It hasn't been all Tua. Obviously he's gone through a really difficult season with the concussions. Teddy's been in and out of the lineup. He's got the finger injury now. Tyreek Hill is just quarterback proof, and I think Adams is quarterback proof too. And AJ Brown, look, Jalen Hurts is a good player, but AJ Brown finally getting the target volume we've always wanted him to get. He never really got it in Tennessee. And Philly, the fantasy team of the year, all their scoring is concentrated to their 5 main guys. If you drafted any of them, I know Goddard was a little bit frustrating as he got hurt, missed about a month of time, but. It's just funny how the quarterbacks changed teams. A lot of them didn't work out. The wide receivers changed teams, and they were all home runs.
Darren Waller, over and under 40.5 yards.
Gonna go over. I like the form he's shown. I realize he's a tight end over 30. I don't know where I'll draft him next year, but he's looked healthy. It's a very narrow concentration for the Raiders. They don't throw the ball to that many guys. So I think he's probably going to have about 60 yards in this game.
You already answered it. George Kittle has how many touchdowns how many weeks?
5.
And you have what at quarterback? A young quarterback. And Jarrett Stidham, not a very experienced quarterback. He's been in the league for a couple of years out of Auburn. Mm-hmm. But guess what?
Like
high percentage passes go to what? The tight ends and the running backs.
Between the numbers, those big targets.
Yeah, and, because a lot of people are like, well, look at Skyler. He kind of struggles. And then look at Brock Purdy, and they got the wrong 7th. No. Skyler might look exactly like Brock Purdy over in San Francisco. Why? Because Miami doesn't have San Francisco's line. Miami doesn't have Christian McCaffrey. Miami doesn't have George Kittle. Yeah, they got the receivers. Okay, they've got the receivers. But people don't understand to run that offense compared to most offenses in the league. Well, the quarterbacks have to do a little more in some of those other offenses because they're not as good. The line can't run block and pass block. Miami's line can only pass block at times, not really run block all the time. See, in San Francisco, you just need a quarterback to kind of just manage the offense. In Miami, you're going to need a quarterback to kind of elevate the offense because the offense is kind of broken. It's
the difference between driving the bus and being a passenger on the bus. I feel like Purdy is on the San Francisco bus, where in Miami, you're asking the quarterback to actually get behind the wheel and steer the car.
Amen.
Steer the bus.
Amen. So that's so back to your point, Darren Waller, I with young quarterbacks, inexperienced quarterbacks, that's why I mentioned Waller because I like either running backs or tight ends always to elevate their numbers with quarterbacks that aren't necessarily as experienced. So, a guy like this week, you would hope that Skyler, well, I know the tight end doesn't become a big part of the offense, but this week I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bigger part of the offense than it normally is because you have a young quarterback. Give him a big target. Give him an easier target in the middle of the field. Derrick Henry, 91.5 rushing yards over and under versus the Jags.
Yeah, he's going over that. We know the Titans basically gave everybody the week off last week, so Henry's fresh. They don't. I mean, they're playing their third string quarterback essentially, a guy who had 20 pass attempts before Dobbs before this week, 27 years old. So I think Henry is going to have 30 carries in this game and will easily beat his rushing prop. All
right, so I know where you're going. Over and under half a rushing touchdown for Derrick Henry.
Oh yeah. He's already
over
in the zone as far as I'm concerned. I think Tennessee will make this a competitive game. I know they've played very poorly over the last few weeks, and a lot of it has been injury stuff. But I'm a Jacksonville fan, and Trevor Lawrence had a breakout year, and Evan Ingram has been terrific the last 5 or 6 weeks. ETN has been a win. Kirk's been a win. But 6.5 point spread, I think that's gone too far. Tennessee's going to show up. They can still make the playoffs. They're certainly fresher because they didn't take last week's game seriously. You can't blame them. They had nothing to gain from that game. I think Jacksonville probably wins, but that game's going to be close in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think it'll be close, but I give Jags the credit because the edge because they have Lawrence, and Lawrence is playing well
He's
now.
Playing awfully well, man.
And you stole some of my thunder.
He moves really well too. I mean, he can make
he's a good athlete, man.
He can throw outside the tackle box. He can run if you need to. He's had a couple of rushing touchdowns. He probably runs for 25 or 30 yards in this game. And it just goes to show you, I'm not the first person to say this, but I mean, you just got to give him a mulligan because he was set up to fail last year with Urban Meyer, the worst coaching situation you possibly could have had. They really didn't have great receivers either. This year, they got him better receivers. Like, I know Kirk and Zay Jones aren't world beaters, but they were improvements. Evan Ingram's he's been awesome for about 6 weeks now. And then next year, they get Calvin Ridley back. Jacksonville's going to be a fun team.
All right, so Trevor Lawrence, over and under half an interception.
Man, I think he plays a clean game because the
Okay.
Tennessee's missing too many players part of their pass rush. I don't think he's going to get sacked a lot. I think he's going to have time to throw, and he's generally processes information really quickly anyway. I don't think he's going to. I think it's going to be a clean game for Lawrence. I don't think he'll turn it over.
Now, I'm asking you some of the underdog things that I'm going to pick tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Rushing for Trevor Lawrence. This is interesting. Over and under 15 and a half yards.
Yeah, but when you were saying it, my first thought was like, I think he's going to have like 18 or 20 yards, 22 yards, something like that. It's an over for me, too.
You and I are thinking the same thing, okay?
You just hope you don't lose that on kneel downs. You hope they're not ahead late in the game and he kneels down and loses like 4 yards or something like that. But,
amen. Yeah, you're right. Passing for Lawrence, over and under 259 and a half.
It's funny. You were saying it, and I was thinking like 255 might be the number. That's something I would probably stay away from. I'd lean over on it, but I don't see an obvious edge in that play.
All right. Another one you mentioned was Travis Etienne. Rushing over and under 68 and a half.
I think he's going to be in the 70s. I lean over. It's not a strong over. Again, the strongest play I have here is Henry. I would bang the table on those.
I love over half a touchdown and definitely over 91 and a half yards because it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. You must feed the monster, bro.
That's where his bread is buttered. And even though you think of him as a between the tackles pounder, he breaks off a lot of long runs too. It could be a case of you could have a Henry prop and you're sitting in the second quarter and he's got 12 carries for 23 yards. You're like, what did I do? And then he breaks off a 57-yard run.
Yeah, I love it. All right, one more for you. Travis Etienne. Rushing and receiving combined, over and under 86 and a half.
Yeah, I don't think that's a play for me. The one thing that's frustrated
me. I like the over.
I could see that. That's the only way I could play it. But the thing that's been frustrating for me is that they haven't used ETN as proactively in the passing game as I think they should. I mean, look, Lawrence and ETN went to college together, right? They know each other. They clicked at Clemson as a pass and receiving duo.
And he's a good pass catcher. I don't know why he hasn't been used as much, but I kind of feel like
yards so many times. How many times you see a flip to like Christian McCaffrey and he gets like 13 yards, he's not even touched and he scampers out of bounds. They don't even get a hit on him. And wouldn't you want your featured back to get tackled by, I always say this, get tackled by the lighter guys on the defense, not the heavier guys on the defense. It means your back lasts longer. I think that's one thing that Doug Peterson hasn't done right this year. He's done a great job. And he won't win Coach of the Year, but he certainly deserves at least a mention. But they haven't used ETN as much in the passing game as I think they should.
No doubt about it. All right, what do you got going on Yahoo Fantasy so folks can check you out on a very interesting weekend?
Yeah, I gave out some awards yesterday. Player values of the year. I listed some of the best games, scoring of the year. That went up on Thursday. I'll make my picks against the spread. We're somewhere like 60% this year. It's been a really good season. We went 3-1 last week. It's not an easy week 18, but we'll give you 5 picks anyway. And if you do have a fantasy game or anything that you're mulling, I'll be back on the Yahoo Fantasy account on Sunday, about a half hour before kickoff. So to get your answer, tell me you're from the show. I'll definitely put you to the front of the line if you have anything going on. Then the playoffs, baby. Let's get Miami in there. I know you guys are all worried about how we're going to defend Joe Flacco now, right? I mean, the Jets.
Oh yeah. I
guess Boomer Esiason and Vinny Testaverde weren't available, so they're going to go with Flacco. But
it's all right. We have the human periscope on our side. Mike Glennon. Okay.
So. Him and Merton Hanks are trying to figure out who's got the longest neck, right?
Really? Like I said yesterday, he should have joined the Navy. That way, if there's subs, he's in a sub, the periscope breaks up Mike Glennon.
Funny.
That's it. It's it.
He's
Mike
got Glennon, he was the reason why they pretty much pushed Russell Wilson out at North Carolina State. Wilson wasn't sure if he wanted to come back or not. Like, well, we got Mike Glennon. What are you doing? And Wilson said, you know what? I think I'll go to Wisconsin and be there for 5 minutes, learn the playbook. And
they were using the baseball shit on him. They were tired of him going to play baseball.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, man, I'm going to keep playing baseball. And it's like, yeah, no, we have Mike Glennon. It's like, okay, sure, dude. I'll go take, Wisconsin to the Rose Bowl. That's fine. No
he
problem.
Was so great that year. I thought he deserved a better showing in the Heisman Trophy voting. Let me ask you this. Wilson, horrible year, right? But we know he had a coach in over his head. They had injuries. They lost Tim Patrick before the season. Williams went down I think week 2 or week 3. Do you think Russell Wilson is fixable?
It's a great question. I think you better get a a Sean Payton. You better get a real veteran coach that can really sit down and command his respect too at the same time. Um, and maybe it's salvageable, because when you look at it, it doesn't look like physically he can't throw it or he can't really move around. He could still move around. Maybe he's not as quick as he used to be or whatever, but that wasn't really his thing of trying to run for yards and all that. He only ran because he had to run and to create. So I'd be interested to see if a proven, established offensive coordinator that can come in can fix him or not.
They need to, obviously they need to crush this hire. They need to have the best quarterback whisperer they can get, whether it's the head coach or the offensive coordinator. They need somebody.
It has to be a guy that's willing to work with him too, bro.
For sure.
That's the combination.
And with Wilson, it's always been because of his height. You can't run a traditional pocket offense the way you would with a lot of other quarterbacks. It's always like, I always say that I think Doug Flutie could have had a long, good NFL career, but nobody wanted to stake their reputation on running in kind of an offshoot offense, because if it failed, they'll think, I'll never work in the NFL again. So, Flutie goes up to Canada, wins a bunch of MVPs there. I know the game in Canada is different, but then he went down to Buffalo. He had a Pro Bowl season. He was a good pro. The problem was nobody wanted to say, well, okay, I'm going to stake my reputation on this, and if it fails, they'll kick me out of the league and I'll be a laughingstock.
We're very traditional in those days with our quarterbacks, whereas now things are changing. We've allowed the college game to influence the NFL game.
The college and pro game get closer and closer every year. They morph together, right? It's almost blurred lines now. You can't tell the difference anymore.
We would have never brought in the Lamar Jacksons and the Jalen Hurts of the world and the Justin Fields of the world 20 years ago. They did it with Randall Cunningham, but it's rare. It's few and far between that you would try to do that. But now we're willing to kind of change things up and and because the game is so much faster now and the guys are bigger and more athletic, it's almost like the high school and college is already moving to the mobile quarterback as it is. So the traditional quarterback is the guy that's actually dying. And even though that's the one that owns all the championships pretty much, is the guy that's stable and back there in the pocket all the time. But I think over the next 20 years, we're going to see the evolution of this game where the quarterback is going to be much more mobile and the athletic guy is going to become the more accurate guy. He has not been that traditionally. Traditionally, the athlete that runs around has usually not been very accurate, but Russell kind of changed those kind of things, so I think that's where we're kind of leaning to, and we're headed in that direction.
Another big part of it is they don't want the quarterbacks obviously to get hit, so it's so advantageous when they run, because the defender is petrified to get that 15-yard personal foul. So it's like, oh, is he sliding? Can I hit him?
Right.
And so it makes it such a cheat code. I always feel like my perfect sweet spot is kind of like the Steve Young idea, where he's a passer primarily, but he certainly can run. Mahomes has elements of that, where Mahomes can run, but he looks to pass first. That's the kind of quarterback I would prefer to have. But I do agree with you that the best quarterback 10 years from now will be somebody who can definitely beat you with his arm and with his legs and with just being a physical athlete. Josh Allen's like that, right? I mean, he can beat you as a thrower. He can beat you running the ball, and he's probably their best goal line back. You have to spot it. You can't have Josh Allen running the ball 15 times a game. It's just a bad business model.
But he runs too much over there. Way too much.
Especially, this is what I'll close with this. One thing that Buffalo does and some other teams do, and I've never understood this, is Buffalo will be playing in a game, the score's lopsided, and Josh Allen's running a read option, or Josh Allen's getting a goal line carry. It's like, what are you doing? He's the one guy you can't replace.
Right. Yeah. It's and you can only take so many hits, but whatever, bro. I'm not a Bills fan. That would be my one complaint if I was doing Bills radio. Is they run him way too much, and I'd like for him to have a really long career if I'm a Bills fan. And something tells me that every hit is going to shorten his career eventually.
Let me ask you one question on the way out. How confident are you that Miami takes care of business and takes the Jets down on Sunday?
I'm not confident. No, I can't say I'm confident. After the last 5 weeks, I can't be confident about anything. I'm just hopeful because we are asking a 7th round pick against a really good defense, dude.
It really
That's
is a
the
good
thing
defense.
about
Yeah,
the
Sauce
Jets.
Gardner is something. They have playmakers on all three levels too.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
talk
man.
about Sauce
They're a
Gardner,
good
but they
defense.
have 4 or 5 guys. The Williams, the defensive lineman, is terrific. It's a really nasty defense that plays with a lot of edge, and they blew a great opportunity. If their offense was just adequate, they would have been a
Right.
playoff team this year.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. And so Miami's issue has also been offense not finishing things off. And now you've got a 7th-round pick running the offense. It's a lot to ask. Now, their offense is pathetic. So can Miami's defense do something here and help them out a little bit? It'll be interesting. Miami can win the game, but you kind of need things to fall into place, overall. And so, yeah, I'm not confident. I'm hopeful is what I am.
Tell me this
That's
is
it.
crazy. I don't know who I heard this from, and maybe it's just somebody throwing something on the wall, see if it sticks. McDaniel can't possibly be in any trouble, right? I mean, he's got
I
to be
don't
alone.
think so. I
Okay,
don't believe the Salguero report. I
that
don't
sounds
think he's in it.
ridiculous to me.
It is ridiculous
Mhm.
because if this was Cam Cameron and the year was a disaster, that's fine. But man, there was so many injuries that like
Mhm.
derailed this team and Tua and everything else and with all the injuries and with Tua missing his games, go look at the stats. He's still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL stat wise. It's stupid. So I don't think it makes any sense to get rid of the combination that you have now. I don't want Tua to play at all this season. Even if they make the playoffs, I don't want him to play. I want him to be out for the rest of the year. Rest that head, rest that brain,
Reevaluate.
start
Yep.
over next year, and hopefully come in with a better attitude of getting rid of the football because he hangs on to it too much. And when he hangs on to it, bad things always happen when he hangs on to it. So hopefully he can learn to get rid of the football. And Mike McDaniel had a good year. He's just got to get a little better in his game day coaching. Listen, he inherited the 2 coordinators. That I can see a year later, you assess what you inherited and then you make some changes. That I can see. But then again, we are talking about Stephen Ross, who does a lot of stupid shit.
Mhm.
And so this would be something stupid. And he is capable of doing that. You know what I mean? Now, if you read that article had nothing concrete. It was could this, could that. There was nothing probable this, probably that. None of it was, oh, yeah, no, this guy's definitely getting fired if they lose. He's definitely staying on if they win. No. This could. There was so much gray area in that
Yeah.
article that
That was
what-
kind of my thought too, but I knew you were close to the situation. I mean, look, the most important thing you can do on offense is threaten a team in the passing game. The Dolphins acquired Tyreek Hill. He had one of his best seasons of his career. I thought he was a legitimate Offensive Player of the Year candidate. He probably won't win it now, but I mean, he still
no.
had a watershed year. And they took Jalen Waddle, who was good as a rookie, but the tree was kind of limited with the routes he would run. He turned into a dynamic player. That's the best thing you can do. As far as some of the game stuff, some of the strategy and McDaniel and everything, that's you got to learn some of that on the fly. You can't prepare for that. It's like being a pilot or an astronaut. You
Right.
can't until you're actually in that chair in the rocket ship. You're not going to know how some of those things work out. I think he's done a great job. He's a guy a month ago people would have put him in the Coach of the Year discussion. I think he's a long-term solution, and no matter what happens on Sunday, I give him certainly a good grade for his first year. I think they made a great hire.
Yeah, I like McDaniel. I keep him. He's got some holes in the game, but he's a young coach. I'll let him figure it
We,
out.
we all we
But
all have blind spots. I mean, Bill
hell
Belichick's got blind
yeah.
spots, right? He hires
Yeah, he
the
has no
wrong people.
He has
He's
no
loyal
Tom
to the
Brady.
wrong people, for one thing,
He
and he
has no
doesn't
Tom
have.
Brady.
Another thing with Belichick is he doesn't have somebody. We all need this, right, Big O? We all need somebody in our life to tap us on the shoulder when we're making a bad decision. I still think Chip Kelly's a good football coach, but when he wanted to sign Sam Bradford to this huge contract, he needs somebody to tap or make this big trade. Tap him on the shoulder and say, Chip, this is a bad idea. Sam Bradford's not your guy. We all need somebody to talk us out of a bad idea.
Are we willing to listen to them? That's the question too. You know what I mean? Because Belichick is kind of hard-headed in his ways where
For
he
sure.
wants to mold all his own coaches to the point that he wasn't even willing to bring in an offensive coordinator. He had to mold one of his current coaches into being an offensive coordinator just to puppeteer what he wants to do. And there you go. And brother, you don't have Brady. That's what's changed your entire world right now.
I do not want to see the
We know
Patriots in the playoffs.
defense, but offense, and by the
Nobody
way,
wants to
Jared
see the Patriots in the playoffs, man. They are one of the hard. I know Stevenson's had a great year, and even though Jacoby Myers lost his mind at the end of the Raiders game, I think he's a nice player, but they have no. I can't see them. The rest of the AFC would probably be like, yeah, bring the Patriots on. We're not afraid. I know they have a good defense, but we're not afraid.
Listen, say what you want. Josh McDaniel, Mac Jones played better under Josh McDaniel than these guys.
For sure.
And say what you want. Jarrett Stidham last week played like he never played in a Patriots uniform. So, obviously McDaniel must be doing something right, coaching-wise on the quarterback side. I don't know about the whole team. That's all. Again, as a head coach, that's a whole different ballgame. But maybe as an offensive coordinator, it'd be interesting to see if Belichick checks himself this offseason and brings in a real offensive coordinator, kind of like what this guy at Texas A&M just did. It brought in Bobby Petrino. That he finally kind of gave in, and Jimbo Fisher. And, he kind of gave in and said, yeah, let me get somebody in here to run the offense, and I can be the head coach.
I call it the reverse Peter principle. The Peter principle is that you eventually get promoted to a job that's over your head. I love hiring failed head coaches as coordinators. Look at Nick Saban always does this, right? He's like, oh, Lane Kiffin is on Skid Row. Let's hire him. Oh, Steve Sarkisian's gone bad for him. Let's hire him. And then these guys have great years, running the Alabama, toy shop, and then they go and get their big payday and go back to head coaching jobs. I love hiring a failed head coach as back to a court. I know it's not going to work out. It doesn't seem like with Judge and Patricia, the Patriots did that, but you talk about what they did today.
Well, it didn't work with Patricia because you put him in a position to fail, because that's not his fault either.
No,
I can't even blame the bird's nest. By the way, that's what I call his beard. I can't blame the bird's nest because he's not an offensive coordinator. I blame Belichick for that.
He's a pencil man in a pen world. But what can I say?
Amen. Follow him on Twitter at Scott_Pianowski. Catch his work there at Yahoo Fantasy. Appreciate you as always, my friend. Thank you.
Great to talk to you. We'll talk soon.
Have a great weekend. There you go. Scott Pianowski, 8 great locations, baby. Sports Grill, Fantasy Football Zone.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.